Up next, the topic turns to Israeli foreign policy in another live You Will Call In program. We'll talk with Rabbi Meir Kahane of Kof International and Jerome Segal of the Jewish Peace Lobby.
Jerome Segal, president of the Jewish Peace Lobby. In your opinion, what's the state of democracy in Israel today?
Well, our real concern with democracy in Israel has to do with the future of democracy in Israel. As you know, Israel today occupies the West Bank and Gaza, which includes 1.7 million Palestinians who are not Israeli citizens but have lived for over 20 years under Israeli control. And the issue is, one, of course, is the absence of their ability to determine their own lives now. But more than that, it's a question of their future. If Israel isn't to forever to be an occupying power, it has only two options, one of which is to free the Palestinians, allow them to govern themselves in their own society, or to annex the West Bank and incorporate the territories and the people. But if it does that, if it remains a democracy, it'll soon cease to be a Jewish state. So it'll be driven, I believe, to retain its Jewishness unless it gets rid of the territories to abandon its democratic character.
Let me ask the same question to the man across the table to you, Rabbi Meir Kahane, chairman of the Chach movement and also a former member of the Knesset. What is the state, in your judgment, of democracy in Israel today?
Well, first of all, I think that every time I hear some Jewish liberal talking about the lack of democracy inside Israel for the Arabs, I'm amazed that I never heard Dr. Segal's voice raised when the state of Israel banned my Koch movement, a thing which, of course, could never happen in this country. But getting back to what was said, I think that Dr. Segal perhaps raised a very, very basic issue which he himself doesn't really grasp. He speaks about the fact that if Israel were to annex the territories, they would be faced with a problem of demography versus democracy, meaning that there might be too many Arabs. I wonder if Dr. Segal has ever thought about the fact that giving up what he calls the occupied lands, which I call, of course, the liberated lands, would not the same problem remain in 20 or 30 years if the demographic situation within the state of Israel would be that of many, many Arab babies and very, very few Jewish babies? And would Professor Segal state that the Arabs have a right to peacefully be a majority within the state of Israel? Does he not recognize that there is a basic contradiction between Zionism per se and Western democracy?
Before anybody responds, let me get each of you to talk a little bit about your association. First, Mr. Segal, what is the Jewish Peace Lobby and what is its goal?
The Jewish Peace Lobby is an American organization composed of American Jews. Our concern is, as Americans, with American foreign policy insofar as it bears on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We're an organization that is concerned about Israel's security, but basically believes that Israel's security can best be satisfied by ultimately a settlement which exchanges land for peace and respects a Palestinian right to self-determination. So
how is the Jewish Peace Lobby funded?
We're funded entirely by small contributions from our members, all of whom are Jewish.
Rabbi Kahane, what is the Chach movement?
The Kach movement, unlike the Jewish peace movement, is a thing that is derived from Israel. We live in Israel. We don't have the luxury of living in Baltimore and talking about giving up and gambling, giving up the land for peace, and if we should lose that gamble, we will suffer and not people in Baltimore. The Kach movement is a movement which states that the land of Israel is ours. The Arabs had an opportunity in 1947 to have their Palestinian state. They turned it down. They went to war. They killed 6,000 Jews in 1948. They were killing Jews in the 1920s and 1930s when clearly the issue was not the occupied lands of 1967. And we get our funding, also in a very small way.
And it is a political party.
Oh, yes, it is. In fact, we won a seat in the Knesset in 1984. In 88, the polls showed us had a large number of seats until I was banned.
Let me tell our audience that the phone lines are open, and you can begin dialing the phone as you think about what you'd have to say or ask our guests. The phone numbers are on the bottom of your screen. If you're calling from the Eastern or the Central time zones, you can dial area code 202-628-2525. And if you're calling from the Mountain or Pacific time zones, it's 202-783-2727, and we'll go to the phones after we hear a little bit more from our guests. And I guess we'll ask Mr. Segal, what would you say to Meir Kahane's opening remarks?
I wanted to actually say a little bit more about the perspective of our organization.
Okay.
Where we think we are in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict right now is with a rare moment which I don't believe is going to last forever. But as probably many people remember, a little bit over 40 years ago, when the United Nations attempted to resolve the conflict through the idea of partition, creating a Jewish state and an Arab state, in November of 1947, what happened is that the Arab countries got up and walked out of the General Assembly, and they denounced this partition resolution as null and void. Some 20 years later, after the '67 war, when the UN Security Council passed Resolution 242, which basically laid out a framework of exchanging land for peace as a basis for a settlement, the PLO at that point denounced Resolution 242 as involving implicit recognition of Israel. And it's basically been the refusal to accept a Jewish state in the Middle East that has been at the heart of the conflict for the last 40 years. In the last year and a half, but basically in November of '88, a long-term evolution, both in Arab thinking and in Palestinian thinking, came to a head when the PLO formally reversed positions on this issue, both with respect to the original idea of partition, and then it accepted Resolution 242, and it met basically the American conditions. My own belief is that for the first time, there's a possibility, and it's only a possibility, and it may not be a great one, but there's a possibility of resolving the conflict. And our belief is that what Israel should do is to sit down with the Palestinian representatives, and we believe that an open election on that would demonstrate that it is the PLO, to sit down with them on the basis of a land for peace formula, as is in Resolution 242, and negotiate directly with them. And our focus is on American policy, which we don't think the American government can force Israel to leave the territories or to negotiate with the PLO, and we don't think it should try to force them. But we do think that America can play a constructive role in moving towards a conflict, and that's really what our organization is about.